Granite colossi wallow like sea lions in the ocean surf. The Brittany coast is wild and rugged, full of drama. Like basalt, granite is an igneous rock, only it's one that cools and solidifies deep in the earth. The plutonic rock, that is, rock stemming from the underworld, has a structure from which the name granite, granum, the grain, is derived. With every tide, the rocks are washed away and returned again, and beaches made up of rocks are not uncommon. Granite is often unobtrusive. Its granules are fused so firmly that the stone is synonymous with durability and duration. Even Goethe described granite as the foundation of the earth. The word seems unflattering when applied to human characteristics. Who wants to be as hard as granite? Are the residents like this? On my journey through Brittany, I meet people who have built into the granite and others who have built structures out of it. At the Château de Kerjean, a relic of the 15th century, still privately owned today, I'm greeted by Madame de Calon. Married into a castle dynasty that has called the chateau their own for 200 years, she has been primarily living in the castle since the death of her husband and her parents-in-law. She cooks for me with her daughter Sophie. Madame and I hurry to the table. Fresh fish. What else could it be in Brittany? And new potatoes with their peels.
Comme ce sont des pommes de terre nouvelles, on n'enlève pas la peau, on la racle. On essaie de vous laisser quelque chose quand même. C'est vrai que je ne devrais pas dire ça.
Oh, we can pretend we eat.
This castle is about 600 years old, and it has been in the same family for 200 years.
The chimney smokes and the sun goes down. Inside, the fire blazes.
No, we don't know. We really don't. There's no archive, nothing that provides explanations.
pense qu'il était plus intéressé par
We think he was interested in wood. Woods in the northern Finistère are pretty rare.
The thing I remember is that my father told me that a certain Monsieur Boudier bought Keroseret, and that he wanted to become rich. He wanted to sell the rocks. But if it were the rocks from which the castle is built, or rocks from around here, no one knows exactly.
The decor is much more recent than the castle itself, and eclectic.
Most of the furniture that is here is from the 19th century. These are souvenirs of my in-laws, family heirlooms. This room was once the main hall of the castle, where the lord of the chateau had his social life, and it has become a room to be shown to tourists. I would say a bit of a museum piece.
Here's the noble room. That is, the room where the lord of the manor pronounced his judgment, and where they had council meetings. This is also the room where the oratorium is located, where the lord of the manor could get closer to God, and if he wanted to pray in solitude. When we were children, we played here too. We put mattresses on the floor and dive on them, just for fun, when we were children. And then, it is here when I was 18, when I had a party for my birthday, when I danced the waltz with my father. And maybe I would eventually continue this tradition if I get married, and maybe do a dance, a waltz, in this room again.
While this imposing room is part of the palace tour, the smaller rooms remain private, inhabited by the family.
This really is my heartfelt impression. When we are at home, we know why we are here. But when I was a child, of course, I had just been here in the summer. So it was a place where I could run anywhere. Go to the sea, in the forests, go run in front, exactly, with my cousin in the walkway to play hide and seek and all these games children play. There were so many of us. We were 24 and
Sophie, we were 40.
No, we were 24 children, not counting the parents and grandparents. Somebody was in each room. Every bedroom was occupied.
The family would end up here every summer. There were tourists who could enter the park because it always had to be open. And they asked what was going on here. One day, my brother-in-law said, "Yes, it is a house of fools."
They guide me through the imposing structure. High ceilings up to 13 feet thick, damp walls with comparatively small windows.
I prepare. I repair things, like the tapestries. We arrange the castle, everything here, for the next summer, for the family to enjoy.
What do Christine and Sophie think about granite?
It's a porous stone that for this reason lets in the outside air and moisture, among other things. That's why you see water stains in some places on the stairs. So yes, it's damp, especially from autumn to spring.
Is this a rock that's cold? Yes, but it's also true that we have fun living here with all the memories we have. And with the fire in the fireplace, it warms us up again. And to have a castle like that is both fun and it's a true joy, but it is also a job that never ends. That's kind of what we call in French a poisoned gift.
From the Stone Age to the present day, the menhirs always cast a spell on us humans. Thousands are summoned to this mysterious alignments of Carnac every year, stones that don't want their secrets told. Whether separately placed or raised in circles or groups, whether menhirs were tombs or not has never been proven. Perhaps the cairns also served as cult monuments, stakes for victims, or court sites. Perhaps, it flashes through my mind, they're simply demonstrations of phallic power. Alain Le Goff was a teacher. Several years ago, he became self-employed. He loves and collects traditional stories. He has published a slender book. Now he gives speaking tours through Brittany and neighboring countries. Historians and naturalists are enthused, and children.
If you hang out on the moor at night and you hear voices singing in the distance, that doesn't mean it's a night of celebration. Put your legs around your neck and run home. These are the goblins, the little people who live in the depths of the earth and come out at midnight. They dance, but they dance so long and so fast that if you enter the round, you are lost. In the morning, we would find you dead of exhaustion among the stones. The night does not belong to men. The night belongs to others. And menhirs are open doors to the other side of the world. If you do not believe me, listen to what the stones say.
We know very little about our ancestors and their relationship to these long rocks. It is believed that they were farmers and grew grains. They had animals, gathered fruit, hunted and fished. And they smoothed the hard rock, worked with flint and glaze pottery. Will we solve the riddle of the menhirs before they are no more? Even the enduring granite is slowly being taken apart by time. Moss settles, the rock breaks open. Water etches out deep fissures. Today, the dominant hypothesis is that these are the alignments of a temple complex, with rows of stone that run like aisles or pathways for processions toward a place where cults worship. Alain sticks to the legend.
Saint Cornelius, who traveled with his ox cart pulled by 2 oxen from Rome, was being pursued by Roman soldiers. When he arrived at Carnac, he saw farmers who were busy sowing oats. "You will be able to harvest the oats tomorrow," said Saint Cornelius. The people stared at him. "The man is crazy. Oats don't grow in a day." Saint Cornelius moved on and hid in a nearby forest. The next day, the Romans showed up. They saw the ripe oats in the fields and men and women who were harvesting them. They stopped and asked the farmers if they had seen a man on an ox cart. The farmers answered, "Yes, the man had passed by when we were sowing the oats." The Romans looked at the field of oats and concluded that the man must have passed here several months ago, and that they no longer had a chance to catch him. So they stopped their pursuit and looked for a good spot to make camp. They headed for a forest where St. Cornelius was hiding. Suddenly, the saint appeared, lifted his hand, and turned the Roman army into stone.
Thousands of years later, once again, a monumental project made of granite. In the Valley of the Thousand Saints, 60 stand upright so far. According to my math, sculptors must chisel and erect granite figures for 100 years to reach this ambitious goal. Patrice Le Guin is not only one of the local artists, but he was a co-creator of the concept. It is all about honoring Brittany and pointing out the connection of this piece of earth with granite.
It's easy when you have the freedom to shape something, but this block already has a shape. That makes it so hard for me as an artist.
A raw block in the shape of a foot. That had never happened before. Excitement filled the quarry. Finally, an artist, Patrice, was given the rock as a gift.
We'll cut this here. It works here. With a square piece of rock, no problem. You drill, break the rock, that's how easy it is. Here it's difficult because it's been done before. Nature has already created the foot. We have to calculate very precisely what we're doing, otherwise we'll cut away too much material and then it's ruined. It's very difficult.
3,500 euros for work on a saint of one's choice, the stone block, plus the tools and board for a month. Then the 9.8 feet high sculpture joins the circle of the Eternals. Thinking about the menhirs, I ask myself how long the eternal lasts, and if it is measured by human or by geological time.
I met Patrice when I was 14. I've wanted to work with Patrice for a long time. There was never the right moment in my life, never an ideal time.
What is so interesting? For me as an artist, I am an autodidact after all. I taught myself how to sculpt. With Xavier it's similar, but he knew the stone already. Being a stonemason is for me more than being a sculptor.
I have worked with rocks since I was 18. I followed Patrice's career in the newspapers and also the sculptures he made in the region of Léonard.
When we met, there was this harmony between the artist who has mastered sculpting and the mason who knows how to handle stone, how to work it. Xavier knows so much that to me as a sculptor and artist is important to know. What does he give me? He and I? We are two. Two parts, one whole. Two who sustain this energy.
Xavier Tanguy is proud to have advanced from a mason in the quarry to a sculptor. He is no longer just the right-hand man for the established artist Patrice, who has already erected memorials for the beheaded Nolwenn, Gwen, Malo, and other saints. This summer, Xavier created his own first sculpture.
So for me, Saint Tudek was the first sculpture I did on my own in June. The first monumental sculpture I did all by myself. When I started working as a mason, I had one goal: follow the footsteps of Patrice Le Guin and one day create a monumental sculpture. That this actually happened this year is huge. It's very important for me. And if things go on this way, I'll be in heaven. The monumental sculpture. Yes, it's part of my dream. And I'm living my dream. There's still a lot I have to discover and to learn from Patrice Le Guin and the other sculptors. And we are going to share our techniques.
Et puis les autres sculpteurs, on est là aussi pour échanger nos techniques et puis voilà.
The project is ambitious. It's the sculptures all from monumental granite, because the granite comes from Brittany, from the quarries, and especially Brittany. For me as a sculptor, if you want, it also gives me something, to make this piece or the other on the site, which is a little magical. I think that in a few years' time, when there will be 1,000 finished, it will be very impressive, and so people will come to recharge their spiritual resources.
Viendront se ressourcer, sûrement, oui, sûrement.
Without light, there are no colors. Am I driving through a greenish gray or a grayish green? A glance into the warm room awakens childhood memories. Storm lamps flickering on the windowsills, placed there by the wives of fishermen who are staring at the sea. I register all the things here made from granite, only a very few new houses, many old ones. As a building material, it has fallen into disrepute because it stores plutonium, especially when new building materials make everything airtight. Granite needs air to breathe. There are bollards, barriers, globes, walls, churches, bridges, and even a park bench. There are still some active quarries at the Côte de Granit Rose, but the demand for pink granite has shrunk. Alain Lecour has managed the plant for 15 years. Before that, he was a mason at another quarry.
Granite is not very popular right now. Our best years were the 80s, 90s. Then everything went downhill. One reason for this are the emerging markets in China and India.
What does Alain think about the pink granite?
No, I don't like the pink granite. I think a house built with pink granite looks like a crude box. Not beautiful. It's square all right, but not beautiful. And I really don't like the tombstones. My favorite granite is the gray Celtic granite. White granite, white and gray, with large granules. That's very beautiful. But pink granite, vomit. There used to be 49 workers at the plant. During the peak years, there were up to 200 masons in the quarry. And today, 4 are left. 4 in 4 quarries. That makes about 20. Here, we only extract the stone. The manufacture was already shut down in 1996. Because there just wasn't enough work. Not only that it is more rare, it's harder to work with. Pink granite is classified in class 4. There's a lot of bad luck in it, so the tools wear out fast on the pink. And it's a grain that is much larger. It's a material that's quite difficult to work. Granite is being used for many things: paving stones, curbs, countertops for kitchens, but mainly, one produces tombstones from pink granite. Yeah, and that's about it. But even that market has fallen apart because of cremations. The demand has just gone down.
Crosses and graves. Tombstones, so heavy, as though one were afraid all the dead would become revenants and return from the grave. But then, a majestic, even though unfinished, church. The Saint-Sampson Cathedral, with its 3 high naves, makes the congregants look like miniatures, and it makes me shiver. Once again, an image, no, a feeling of damp cold from my childhood on the North Sea is awakened. For me, granite contains just a bit too much religion. My eyes wander over the messages cut into stone. I'm standing in front of the Christianized menhir of Saint-Uzec. I'm thinking intrusion, a Celtic cultural object erected 5,000 to 2,000 years BC, not only disrespected, but abused. Again, I glide through the gray monotony. The enormous tidal range is fascinating. During ebb tide, I can walk to a small chapel in the bay. I'm taken aback looking at its saint. Why did erosion break down his nose of all things? But this time, water and wind are not the culprits. It was rather the young women who wanted to make sure they would find a husband. If the needles they inserted into the oracle's nose stay put, wedding bells would ring that very same year. If they didn't, Bad luck for the girl. Pink granite rocks, a turquoise sea. For the first time, I'm yanked out of my black and white world. The Côte de Granit Rose is a geological rarity that attracts petrologists from all over the world. Geologist Jacques Buffet explains to me how these rounded stones came to be.
Alors, ces fractures se forment en profondeur lorsque le granit refroidit.
These fissures form deep inside. When granite cools off, its volume shrinks, and these fissures are formed.
Par le biais de l'érosion, par
When the
exemple,
granite later comes to the surface, for example, because of erosion, water, particularly rainwater, can attack the stone in its weak spots.
au niveau de ces
The
zones de
fractures.
faiblesse que sont ces fractures.
Patience wears away the stone, I think, as I look at the tidal basins atop the granite.
Et l'on voit ici plusieurs enveloppes d'altération.
Here we can see the
On
outer
appelle ça
layers of
une
erosion.
structure d'oignon.
They form a kind
On
of
voit
onion structure.
plusieurs enveloppes qui traduisent en fait
One can see several
les
indentations which show the different
degrés
steps
d'altération
of
du
the
granit.
evolving
Petit
shapes
à
of the
petit,
granite.
Le granit
Gradually, the
va
granite
être
forms out of them.
isolé, va être
Polished into round
arrondi
shapes
par
through erosion, its core becomes a very beautifully formed round ball. These balls we see here in this panorama.
Ici, dans les panoramas.
Formed by waves and ebb and flow, water, wind, and salt, the clamshell rock defies the elements. Still, one day, it will become chaos like all the other natural sculptures and finally crumble, and in the end, become pink grains of sand.
Alors ici, on peut regarder attentivement les différents minéraux.
So here we can look closely at the different minerals that make up the rock.
D'abord, les minéraux qui constituent le principal
We
attrait
first
de
see
ce
the minerals
granit
that
de
constitute the
Carnac.
main
Ce sont
attraction
ces
of this
grands
granite from
minéraux
Plumanac.
rectangulaires.
These are large rectangular minerals, which are pink.
Alors, ce sont des feldspats. Et la
Then they
couleur
are
rosée
feldspar, and the
est
pink
due
color
à une
is due to a small fraction of iron
de
in the
fer
feldspar.
dans le feldspat. Juste à côté, on peut
Next to it
voir un
is
autre
another
minéral
mineral that is
qui a
downright
une
white
cette
this
fois-ci.
time. It's a different
C'est
family
une
of
autre famille
feldspar.
de feldspat. Et puis on retrouve un minéral qui est gris.
And then there's a gray mineral in the form of a large cube.
Cube.
It
Ça
resembles a
ressemble
little
petit
bit of
peu
cooking
à
salt.
Du sel de cuisine, c'est du quartz.
It's quartz.
Tous ces
All these
se
minerals
touchent les
touch
uns
each other
avec
and
les
form
autres et
granite.
forment le granit.
I look at the composition of granite, and a trivial children's rhyme from my school years comes to mind. Feldspar, quartz, and mica, those three I'll always like a. The Sentier des Douaniers, the old path of the customs police, winds along the coast. I still don't know where Jacques Buffet will take me the next morning. During the outflow, the difference between ebb and flow around here is up to 36 feet in height. We take off. Shells have settled on the granite. Algae. Soaking wet, muddy ground. I follow my scientist, who promises to take me to the place of pilgrimage for geologists from around the world.
Here is an absolutely exceptional outcrop, where we very clearly see the contact between the pink granite that we know from before, with the top shaping these granite balls, with the black Cornienne, the Hornfels underneath. Hornfels is created by a metamorphosis caused by contact with other minerals. Together, they make up rocks of sedimentary layers, later metamorphosed at depth by granite magma. You can clearly make out the light and the dark layers, and it's noted that while normally the layers are deposited horizontally, they have been distorted vertically. But one can still see the white-black order.
Jacques did not exaggerate too much. I have never before seen such an amalgamation of rocks. Like a folded quilt, the stone rolls down the embankment with narrow folds of granite that poke out like a plush lining.
Le granit se met en place.
The granite is forced in the sediment with strength, with power. As magma, it injects as a vein between and across the vertical layers. And so we are still able to recognize both of the stones.
One can literally sense the power granite exerts to compress the softer sediment deposits. The high tide has separated the island again from the mainland. Jacques and I have to use the boat to return. For a moment, the setting sun bathes the coastline in a glaring golden light. Fort La Latte is a mighty fortress on the Atlantic, a relic from the Middle Ages. Built with granite from a nearby quarry on the coast. At the entrance, a pillory, this one only for men. The bent-over posture would have been too obscene for women. The cannons in the garden pointed at England. One could think that an obsessive militarist would own such a place, but in my conversation with the grandchildren, I discover a sense of humor about the whole thing, and love for the Middle Ages.
No. My grandfather was a scholar, specializing in the history of the Middle Ages. When my grandfather bought it in 1931, you could see the open sky from inside.
There was neither a roof nor floors. He put all of his energy and a lot of money into the renovation of the fortress. So did the next generation, my parents. And we are trying to maintain this inheritance, and slowly, with the help of ticket sales, we continue the restoration process. We live from tourism. Each visitor helps.
For us, it has always been a privilege. It's true that there was a house to ameliorate, with a grand backdrop provided by nature. Sure, I was a girl, so that's a little different. But my brothers, they could play knights.
Every time that we came as children during the holidays, the moment we took the first turn of the way and could see the castle, our hearts would beat faster. It always had, even when we were younger, uplifted my heart.
When I started to conduct tours and greet visitors, I had lived alone here for 7 months. I got something positive out of it, because when you are alone in the castle, you cannot afford to be afraid. Fortunately, there are no ghosts here, but sometimes nature gets out of hand. I have lived through storms and had to wipe the floors after thunderous rain. The severe weather, that is frightening.
We got electricity at Fort-la-Lotte in 2001. Before, no power at all. Tiffany still lived here at the castle without electricity.
Yes, I lived here without electricity and without heating. I had a petroleum lamp and a candle. And there were no toilets, just latrines. Long live comfort, long live modernity.
It's very important to take care of this castle. It is almost like an autonomous person, so it needs us. It's like a calling, the call of the castle. And I am lucky to live only a mile away, so I'm right next to my work.
I am the special emissary for the castle. I take care of publicity, welcome visitors, plan events. For example, our medieval days. I also take care of the artists. My job is quite important. Besides that, I tend the gardens, particularly the Square of the Saints, a medieval garden with plants we have forgotten about.
Our main goal is maintaining the building and passing its history on to future generations. The castle also hosts filming and some other events or seminars. Financially, it's interesting. And then it's the continuity of the castle, which originally was a military installation and then became a cultural heritage site.
Our parents still have the final say about what happens with this fortress, but everybody plays his part. It would be impossible for a single person to take care of such a castle. The heavy responsibility has to be carried by several of us.
Inheriting the castle from our grandparents, there's never the question if this is too much of a demand or too much work. It's part of our life, maybe in our genes. It's a job we perform with great passion. You don't question it each and every day. You do the work you have to, and that's it.
The day we ask that question won't be a good one. If we started in that direction, it would be the beginning of the end.
It's a lot of work, but it is incredible to live with such a passion. Passionate people understand that. It lends a dimension to your life, like a big love. My favorite room is the top room of the watchtower, first of all because it's so plain. A circular room that reflects the Middle Ages. The ceiling consists of cross-shaped vaults made from granite. It's fantastic, a masterpiece made by masons of the Middle Ages. It dates back to 1350. The room exudes tranquility and at the same time an enormous power. The power of this place, which one could describe as a terrestrial power. We are close to the seismographic fault that separates us from England. This room has lived through every tempest and every earthquake.
Not just a fortress, an entire city. Saint-Malo protects itself with a massive wall. In Brittany, fear and defense seem to have been the motor for thinking, acting, and building time and again. The priest Abbé Fouret obviously didn't find the coast near Roteneuf dramatic enough. Starting at the end of the 19th century, he spent 30 years creating a gigantic relief with hundreds of figures between the cliffs. They're villains, serious fishermen, the sick and dying, and gruesome monsters. There are many legends regarding this defrocked priest and his figures. A recently discovered interview states that he was neither mute nor a stutterer. Tightly holding on to each other, staring into nothingness or the deep blue sea. By the way, they were originally painted in bright colors. A hermaphrodite with an elephant's trunk pulls a girl by her braids. Or is it a Chinese scene? Here, the artist poses between an Egyptian and a Chinaman. A monster's sardonic laugh. Is it really the apocalyptic family saga of the Roteneufs, sailors, pirates, and smugglers? Or are these demons the artist was fighting within himself, symbolizing the mass grave where sea monsters took revenge on some cruel rulers? Or is it Fouret's criticism of the war against the Boers? Friends of Abbé Fouret try to cast light on this dark oeuvre. And I would love to know if the stone gave him something to hold on to. My drive to Mont Dol, a prelude to Mont Saint-Michel. Sediments have built up around the village, making it less spectacular. But again, a granite massif. A last look at the highest of the menhirs in the area. It is 18 feet tall, plus 12 feet deep in the ground. I drive through green marshland. One of the villages is called Beauvoir. Where do I find Sartre? No, not him, but Camus is the name of the next one. Myths are made for the imagination to breathe life into them, he wrote in his Myth of Sisyphus, about the man who was condemned to roll a stone up a mountain over and over without success. I stop at a meadow and look at Mont Saint-Michel, at a gilded Archangel Michael who crowns the tower, the man who killed the dragon. The legend of Artus is mingled with religious symbols if one tries to trace back the history of Mont Saint-Michel. But I'm mainly fascinated by the unusual length of time it took to construct it, 500 years. The granite that was used comes from the nearby Chaussee Islands. During the ebb tide, the granite blocks were fastened under the ship. During high tide, it sailed to the mainland, and at the next low tide, it was unloaded. Mont Saint-Michel was a place for pilgrims, then a monastery, then a prison. During the French Revolution, the monks were driven out. Since 1969, 9 monks and nuns have been living at the highest point of the island. This is not a place of peace and quiet, and the inhabitants of the monastery didn't even aim for that. They see Mont Saint-Michel with its many tourists and visiting school children as a perfect place to recruit new believers. No surprise that the cloister, once devoted to prayer and meditation, has become the center of attraction for tourists. And Holy Mass is a beneficial spectacle. Mont Saint-Michel is, so one says, France's most important landmark. For me, it is the symbol of granite incarnate in the middle of the thunderous Atlantic.